Ad hoc literally translates to "for this," and in this context it refers to the use of convenient, unfounded excuses tailored to the specific needs of a failing argument or position. It's the ultimate, but obviously fallacious, get-out-of-jail-free card, played to do whatever is required in order to get around the fact that your position doesn't hold water. An argument using this fallacy can look like this. Premise 1, if not X, then not P. Premise 2, not X. Conclusion 1, therefore not P. Oh crap! Premise 3, insert convenient unfounded excuse here. Conclusion 2, therefore P. Typically, a person committing this fallacy does so because of some obligation to defend their position even when it's proven wrong. This can be a literal duty, maybe your job depends on it. A lawyer must defend his client, and employees of a company may be required to uphold and defend company policies. But in many cases, the obligation is just perceived, such as an emotional attachment to a belief. Of course, this includes religious faith, but it also often applies to things like political ideology or belief in some pseudoscience. For example, fundamentalist Christians love to point out that the Bible contains no contradictions. When an atheist shows one, and believe me, there are plenty, they say something to the effect of, well, atheists just can't possibly understand the Bible. Well, isn't that convenient? And while on the subject of dishonest Christians, in his debate against Sean Carroll, William Lane Craig appealed to the Bourdieu-Guth-Vilenkin theorem to prove that the universe has a beginning. Carroll correctly pointed out that this not only isn't what the theorem states, it only applies under very strict conditions and it looks like it doesn't apply to our universe, but also that this isn't what Alan Guth, one of the people behind the theorem, believes. Craig's dumbfounded response was basically, well, what he believes is just his own wishful thinking. Right, so the guy behind the theorem doesn't know whether Craig's interpretation of it is correct or not because derp wishful thinking. Convenient. Ad hoc is often associated with a double standard. They did something bad. That's obviously completely unacceptable. But then someone on your side does the exact same thing or even worse. Well, that's totally different because of some convenient excuse you know you'd never accept if it came from the other side. It should take you about 10 seconds to come up with multiple examples of this from politics, but in an attempt to remain as politically neutral as possible, I'll let you do that yourself. For bonus points, come up with examples from your own side as well, because yes, they've done it too. An important point that must be mentioned here is that a hypothesis made up to rescue a failing theory is indeed ad hoc, but not fallacious. The fallacy would only be committed if it were a statement of fact rather than a hypothesis. When a scientist notices a problem with a well-established theory, he doesn't say, well then, it must be like this, because otherwise the theory would be wrong. Instead he says, well, hang on, if it's like this, that would actually solve the problem. And then he goes on to test that hypothesis. Ad hoc hypotheses tend to be regarded as weak, but because they are presented as hypotheses, they are not fallacious. A great example of this is dark matter. It was an ad hoc hypothesis designed to solve a problem related to the rotation rates of galaxies. However, it also made testable predictions regarding gravitational lensing, and these predictions have since been confirmed. Even though the jury is still out on exactly what dark matter is, this so-called excuse actually held up to being tested. It would have been fallacious to say that this invisible extra mass must be there simply because that would explain the unexpected rotation rates. Compare this to when flat earthers look at something disappearing beyond the horizon. Instead of concluding that they're looking at the curvature they keep asking the rest of us to show them, they say it must be an optical phenomenon because otherwise the Earth would have to be curved. Do they then go on to make testable predictions to see if this hypothesis holds up? No, of course not. When a convenient and unsupported excuse is pulled straight out of an ass, it probably belongs in a toilet. Stay logical.